The morning I emptied my bank account and handed a stranger $43,000 in a grocery store parking lot, I was completely sober, fully alert, and 100% in control of exactly what I was doing. My children never forgave me for that. Not at first. My name is Daniel Mercer, and for 11 months I let my family believe I had lost my mind. It started the way most quiet disasters do, not with a bang, but with a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon while I was eating leftover soup and watching the birds at my back feeder. "Dad," my son Marcus's voice carried that particular tension he developed somewhere between his second year of medical school and his first solo surgery. Tight, controlled, like he was delivering a diagnosis he didn't want to give. "I need you to look at something." He'd seen a post on a neighborhood Facebook group, a warning, someone claiming that a retired contractor in our town had been defrauded of his life savings by a con artist posing as a government official, fake badge, fake accent, real money gone. The post had a photo. The retired contractor had kind eyes and a bewildered expression, the kind of look that said, "I still don't understand how this happened." "That's Gerald Hoffman," I told Marcus. "He lives 3 streets over, good man, used to help me with the gutters." "Dad," the word again, that word that meant pay attention, "I'm about to say something important. You have almost exactly the same financial profile he does. Retired, single account. You haven't updated your security since Mom passed." He wasn't wrong. After Alina died 2 years ago, I'd let a lot of things slide. The gutters, the back porch light, the beneficiary forms on my retirement accounts. When grief settles into a house, it makes the practical things feel obscene. "I'll be careful," I told him. He didn't believe me. I could hear it in the silence before he said goodbye. What Marcus didn't know, what neither of my children knew, was that I had already been contacted. 3 weeks earlier, a man named Officer Raymond Cole had called me from what appeared to be a federal number. He was smooth, professional. He explained that my identity had been compromised in a data breach, that my accounts were flagged, that I needed to act immediately to protect my assets by moving them to a secured federal holding account until the investigation cleared. I'm not a stupid man. I spent 31 years as a high school history teacher. I've read about cons, about manipulation, about the specific psychological architecture of fraud. I knew what he was doing. But I also recognized something else, something that made me sit very still in my kitchen chair and listen very carefully. I recognized that the man on the phone was using a script, and I had heard that script before, almost word for word, 6 weeks earlier from Gerald Hoffman's own mouth, sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee going cold between his hands, his eyes still carrying that bewildered look. Gerald had described every detail, the number, the phrasing, the urgency, the escalating pressure. The way they made you feel like cooperation was the only intelligent choice. So when Officer Cole called me, I didn't hang up. I played along. I want to be precise about what I decided to do, because my son Marcus, brilliant, careful, methodical Marcus, later told me it was the stupidest thing he'd ever heard of, and I want the record to show that I disagree. I decided to trace them. Not report them. I'd already learned from Gerald's experience that by the time police were involved, the money was gone and the trail was cold. Not warn them off, they'd simply move to the next target. I wanted to follow the money. I wanted to know where it went, who touched it, and how many other people like Gerald were losing their savings to this particular operation. I had a plan. What I didn't have was a way to explain it to my children without them shutting it down immediately. So I kept it from them. For 11 months, I kept it from them. My daughter Renata is a real estate agent. She has an instinct for when a deal is wrong, something about the way numbers sit on a page, the way a seller answers a question slightly too quickly, the way enthusiasm can be a mask for desperation. She has made a career out of reading rooms and reading people. She called me 2 weeks after Marcus's call, on a Sunday, her voice careful in a way that meant she'd been thinking about how to say something for a while. "Dad, I pulled your property records." I set down my coffee. "You pulled my property records." "I needed to check something." A pause. "Someone ran a soft inquiry on your address. That's how these things start sometimes. They identify targets through property ownership, retired homeowners, single occupancy. It's Dad, it's a whole market. They sell lists." She was right. I knew she was right because Officer Cole had referenced my address in our third call, unprompted, as a way of establishing legitimacy. "I'm fine, Renata." "You sound weird." "I'm eating soup." "You always eat soup when you're avoiding something." I switched to a sandwich the next day and didn't think about what that said about me. Here is what the 11 months looked like from the inside. I gave Officer Cole, whose real name I eventually learned was a man operating out of 3 cities under rotating identities, $43,000 in a grocery store parking lot. It was my savings. It was real money. And yes, I handed it to a man in a gray sedan who thanked me with genuine warmth and drove away. What he didn't know was that I had photographed his plates, his face through the passenger window, the partial tattoo on his left forearm visible when he rolled down the glass. I had been recording every phone call for 4 months. I had a file, a growing, methodical, documented file. I had also connected with 2 retired FBI agents through an online fraud awareness forum, men who had spent careers building exactly this kind of case and who recognized immediately what I was building. They told me I was either brave or foolish, probably both. They helped me anyway. Marcus found out in month 7. He came to visit unannounced, a habit he developed after a leaner died, checking in without warning to make sure I was eating, sleeping, functioning. I love him for it. I also, on that particular Tuesday, had my dining room table covered in printed phone records, a map of 3 cities with red string connecting addresses, and a yellow legal pad with 40 pages of handwritten notes. He stood in the doorway of the dining room for a long time. "Dad, before you say anything, what is this?" "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've given someone $43,000 and built a conspiracy board about it." "That's actually fairly accurate, but the context." "The context." His voice had gone very flat, the voice he used. I imagined, when a surgery had not gone the way he planned, and he had to speak clearly to his team through whatever he was feeling. The context is that you are a 67-year-old man living alone who handed a stranger $43,000 and didn't tell his children. He sat down across from me. He put his hands flat on the table on top of my notes, and he looked at me the way he used to look at problems in school, like if he stared at them long enough, they would become solvable. "Walk me through it," he said finally. So I did. It took 3 hours. By the end, Marcus had read every page of the legal pad, studied the map, and listened to 40 minutes of recorded calls on my phone. He didn't say anything for a while after. He just sat with his coffee, which had gone cold, and stared at the middle distance. "You're not stupid," he said at last. "I know." "I said you were stupid." "You said it was the stupidest thing you'd ever heard of. There's a distinction." He almost smiled, almost. "I need to call Renata. She's going to be angry. She's going to be terrified, then she's going to be angry." He was right on both counts. Renata drove 4 hours to sit in my dining room and read the same file Marcus had read. She cried once, quietly, when she got to the section about the money leaving my account. Then she dried her eyes, straightened her posture, and became the version of herself she is when a deal is falling apart and she refuses to let it. "The plate," she said, "you got the plate. And the face and the arm. The arm might be more useful." She turned a photograph over in her hands. Tattoos are registered sometimes if he's been printed. The retired agents think so too. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and something shifted in her expression. Something that moved through anger and fear and landed somewhere that looked, to my old teacher's eye, like a reluctant and complicated respect. "You should have told us," she said. "You would have stopped me." "Yes." "Then I couldn't tell you." She didn't have an answer for that. Neither did Marcus. We sat in the truth of it together, the three of us, around a table covered in evidence, and I think we all understood something about each other in that silence that we hadn't understood before. The case broke 4 months later. I won't take sole credit. The retired agents, a fraud unit in 2 states, and a prosecutor who'd been building a parallel case for 18 months all deserve most of it. But my file, my recordings, my photographs, and the testimony I gave contributed to the arrest of a man who had defrauded 22 people across 4 states of a combined total of just over $800,000. Gerald Hoffman got 60% of his money back. I got all of mine. Marcus called me the night the arrest made the news. He didn't say much. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was eating soup. He laughed, a real one, surprised out of him, and said that was somehow both reassuring and alarming. Renata sent me a text at midnight. "I'm still mad at you. I'm also really proud of you. Those 2 things are apparently able to coexist." I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone down and looked out the kitchen window at the dark yard, at the bird feeder Alina had hung the summer before she got sick. Still full because I fill it every Sunday out of a habit I have no intention of breaking. I thought about Gerald Hoffman's bewildered eyes in that photograph. I thought about 22 people who'd answered a phone call and trusted the wrong voice. I thought about how fear and love can look almost identical when they come from the same place. My son thinks I'm brave. My daughter thinks I'm reckless. They're both right. I'm 67 years old and I've buried a wife and taught 1,000 students, and I've learned that the line between brave and reckless is usually just whether or not things worked out. They worked out. The soup is warm. The birds are coming back. That's enough for today.